They arrived on a Tuesday. We remember that because someone made a joke. Of all the days for the world to end, it had to be a Tuesday. The sky went dark at noon. Not like an eclipse, this was different. The light was not blocked, it was consumed. Their ships were perfect shadows. They drank the sunlight and left only coldness behind. They made no sound, no grand entrance, no booming announcement from the heavens. Just a silent, creeping void that settled over our busiest cities. We looked up from our desks and our coffee shops. We saw nothing. And that nothing was the most terrifying thing we had ever seen. The silence was the first weapon they used against us. They watched us for 17 days. We did not know what they were doing at first. We saw thin beams of light, pale and searching. They scanned our libraries and our battlefields. They scanned our cradles and our graves. Then we understood. They were taking inventory. They were not interested in our leaders. They were not interested in our art. They were counting our bones. They measured our lifespans, our fragility. They analyzed our biology with cold precision. We were a collection of data points to them, a species with a predictable expiration date. Their silent judgment settled over the planet. We were flawed. We were temporary. We were not worth speaking to. We tried to speak anyway. It is what we do. We filled the airwaves with everything we were. We sent greetings in 3,000 languages. We sent our music, from soaring symphonies to simple lullabies. We sent our mathematics, our proof of a shared universe. We offered them the sum of our knowledge. We showed them the best of us. We hoped to find a common spark, a sign of understanding. The silence that came back was heavier than before. It was not an absence of sound. It was an answer. It was a statement of our own irrelevance. We had offered them the stars. They had not even bothered to look up. We stood before them, our hands outstretched, and they looked straight through us. Our weapons were next. We had spent generations perfecting them. They were monuments to our fear and our ingenuity. We launched our best missiles. They flew toward the silent shadows in the sky. They did not explode. They simply vanished, swallowed by the darkness. Our railguns fired slugs of metal at impossible speeds. The slugs disappeared without a sound, without a trace. It was like throwing stones into the deepest ocean. We watched our greatest powers become meaningless gestures. Our generals stared at their screens, their faces pale. The tools that had defined our strength were children's toys. When the last missile was gone, a profound despair fell. We had nothing left, or so we thought. In a forgotten broadcast station in the Andes, a historian named Elena had an idea. It was a foolish, desperate, beautiful idea. She decided to send them a story. It was a tale of a king who lost his kingdom, but not his honor. A whisper against a silent god. That single story changed everything. It was not a weapon. It was a seed. The idea spread across the networks that still connected us. If they were counting our bones, we would count our stories. We turned our archives into armories. Our libraries became our war rooms. Every historian, every poet, every filmmaker became a soldier. We gathered the tales that defined us, the myths of our creation, the legends of our heroes, the simple stories of everyday life. We translated them into binary, the universal language of machines. We built a new resistance, not from steel, but from memory. We were a species of storytellers. We had forgotten that our greatest strength was not in our fists, but in our voices. The silent sky had judged us as temporary. We would show them the parts of us that were timeless. Their logic was flawless. Their machines were perfect. They understood physics, biology, chemistry. But they did not understand us. Our defiance was a statistical anomaly. Our continued existence was an error in their calculations. We should have surrendered. We should have broken under their silent pressure. Every model they ran predicted our collapse. Yet we fought on, with weapons they could not comprehend. They saw our broadcasts of stories as system noise, random data packets from a failing civilization. They did not understand that hope is not logical. Courage is not a calculation. Love is not an equation. They were the smartest things in the universe. And they were completely, adorably clueless about what they were facing. The first sign of victory was small. It was almost missed. A single maintenance drone patrolled a ruined street in what was once Warsaw. It was a perfect machine, a spider of chrome and sensors. Its job was to catalog our decay, to record our end. From a hidden speaker, we broadcast a story. It was not a grand epic. It was the true account of a mother during the old wars. A mother who hid her child from soldiers. A story of a love so fierce it defied an army. The drone stopped. Its optical sensors wavered. For 9 seconds, it stood completely still. Then it resumed its patrol. But its path was altered. It avoided the spot where the child in the story had been hidden. It was a ghost in their machine. A flicker of something that was not logic. It was enough. We had found our weapon. We built an arsenal of legends. We aimed our histories at their perfect minds. We gathered the epics of every culture, every tribe. Gilgamesh wrestling with mortality, Sun Wukong challenging the heavens, Anansi the spider tricking the powerful. Each broadcast was a volley of pure emotion. We sent them tales of sacrifice, of heroes who chose death over dishonor. We sent them comedies, the absurd, joyful laughter of our species. We sent them tragedies, the gut-wrenching sorrow of loss. We did not hold back. We showed them our flaws, our greed, our cruelty, our mistakes. We sent them the story of the Trojan War. We sent them the story of Cain and Abel. We sent them every contradiction that made us who we were. We were fighting a war of ideas against an enemy that only had one. They did not understand our attack, but they understood that they were being attacked. Their response was cold and brutal. The silent ships began to act. One of the shadows over London shifted. A single beam of energy, silent as everything else they did, lanced down. It did not explode, it simply erased. A section of the city, a perfect circle 5 miles wide, was gone. No rubble, no fire. Just a smooth, glassy crater where millions had lived. They did not have to be loud to be terrifying. They did the same to Tokyo, to Cairo, to Rio de Janeiro. They were trying to erase our cities. They thought they could erase our spirit with them. They were trying to delete the hard drive. They did not realize we had backups in every surviving heart. Their cold destruction backfired. For every city they erased, 1,000 new stories were born. We told the tales of the heroes of London, the first responders who ran toward the silence, the musicians who played on the edge of the crater. We sang the songs of the ghosts of Tokyo, the spirits of a city that now lived only in memory. Our losses did not silence us. They made our chorus grow louder. Every fallen hero gave birth to a new epic. Every erased landmark became a holy site in our shared narrative. They were burning our libraries, unaware that we were the books. The story of humanity was not written on paper. It was written in us. And we were still here. We were voices from the dust, and we would not be silenced. We needed to understand them. To defeat an enemy, you must know their story, or in this case, their lack of one. A team of our best minds, linguists, programmers, and star science experts, analyzed the drone's hesitation. They studied the faint energy signals from the silent ships. They found a pattern, a terrifying and beautiful simplicity. The invaders were not an army. They were not a civilization. They were a single being, a vast star-born mind. We called them the Kai, Lascar. The name meant the one voice in an ancient tongue. Each ship, each drone, was just a fingertip of a single consciousness, a mind that had never known a second opinion. It had never known an argument. It had never known a contradiction. It was perfect and logical and utterly, achingly alone. And we finally understood its flaw. A single mind can be broken. The plan was audacious. It was desperate. And it was uniquely human. We would not send one story. We would not send 1,000 stories. We would send them all, every single one, at the exact same time. We coordinated a global broadcast. Every radio telescope, every satellite, every handheld device would be aimed at the sky. We gathered our symphony of 1 billion souls. We would send them our triumphs and our failures, our love songs and our declarations of war, our sacred texts and our stupidest internet memes. We would send them the joy of a child's first step and the despair of a final goodbye. We would show them the tangled, contradictory, messy truth of what it meant to be human. We would show them what it was like to be many, to be us. We held our collective breath and pressed send. For a moment, nothing happened. The sky was still dark. The silence was still absolute. And then, a sound. For the first time, the Kai Lascar spoke. It was not a word. It was a scream, a shriek of pure static and agony that echoed from every speaker on the planet. The single, perfect mind was hit by a tidal wave of everything. 1 billion different lives, 1 billion different truths, love and hate, hope and fear, logic and madness, all at once. It was a cacophony that broke them. The silent ships began to flicker. Their perfect shadows wavered like a dying flame. Their systems screamed. Their logic crashed. The beautiful, tangled mess of our stories was a virus for which they had no defense. Their flawless mind shattered into 1 million pieces. The shriek stopped as suddenly as it began. The ships began to fade. They were not flying away. They were dissolving, becoming transparent. Their light-drinking darkness was thinning. They were retreating from our reality, from the noise they could not process. But before the last ship vanished, it sent one final message, a single packet of data. We were expecting a curse, a final threat, a warning. But it was none of those things. Our computers translated it. It was not a statement. It was a question. One word that hung in the silence they left behind. A word that shook us to our core. The word was, why? They are gone. The sun shines on the glassy scars of our cities. The sky is ours again. We are left with our wounds and our stars. We look up at the empty heavens and we wonder. Did we destroy the Kai, Lascar? Or did we give it the one thing it never had? A doubt? A question? A reason to tell a story of its own? We won. We know that. But we did not win by being stronger or smarter. We won by being messier. We won by being contradictory. We won by being human. They counted our bones and found us wanting. We counted our stories and found ourselves infinite. And that is the story we will tell to our children under a quiet and listening sky.